came through to me, and from the emotional standpoint, I got kind of emotional to see that really happening.
Christine, you used to cover him as well. Talk to me about the significance of this.
I covered that entire season for the Washington Post, covering the Washington football team. Every second of that story of Doug, he wasn't the starter. There was another player named Jay Schrader, but Joe Gibbs, the great Hall of Fame coach, decided to go with Doug for the playoffs. And then, of course, for the Super Bowl, making him the first black quarterback to start a Super Bowl. Hard to believe that was January of '88. And then, of course, he won the game and became the MVP. Heroic. He bent his knee back. We were talking about this earlier. He came out for a play. He wanted to fight to get back in that game, won the MVP award. Doug comes from another era. He comes from a time, Laura and Dante, where guys were told, if you were a black man, you can't play quarterback. Or if you play in college, you can't play in the pros. I cheered for a quarterback as a girl, the University of Toledo, Chuck Ealey, who had to go to the Canadian Football League to play quarterback. And yet he was one of the greatest quarterbacks I've ever watched play. But at that time, my dad told me they're not going to let him play quarterback because they don't think black men have the ability or are smart enough. It was just pure racism. And I learned that as a young girl, a suburban white girl, because of Chuck Ealey. And then to see Doug be able to pull it off, there was such joy for him, tears in his eyes. And I have to tell you, as a hard-bitten journalist, there were probably tears in my eyes, seeing him accomplish what 10, 12 years earlier, a man I cheered for, Chuck Ealey, could never have accomplished. And now, to see this, on one level, as we've talked about, we're shocked that this is the first time that two black men are starting. But what an achievement, and it certainly will not be the last time that two black men are starting.
And as you mentioned, Dr., there's the idea of the age of these players.